Thomas here with Much Profs, going to give you another how-to video. A common question that I get asked a lot is, can you make it out of cardboard, or could you make it out of another material? The answer to that question is I don't necessarily know. I generally build one of an item that you see in the video, and then that's pretty much it as far as my experience with materials on that particular build. So I will say that there are obviously limitations depending on the type of material that you want to use, and I thought that we could probably dive into that a little bit and see if it works. So I'm going to take my Mortal Kombat Mempo that I recently revisited and see if I can make it out of some interesting materials. Let's get to building. I figured I would start with the most commonly requested material variant, which is cardboard. I got my start making helmets out of cardboard. A good person to watch on YouTube is Dolly Lomo, if cardboard is your material of choice. As I trace my pattern onto the material, I have to think about the curves of my mask and make sure to align the corrugation so that it will bend correctly. The great thing about this material is it's easily accessible and often you can get it for free. To form foam to a curve, you heat it up and bend it over a round object. For cardboard, you simply bend it in the direction of your curve, breaking a little bit of the rigidity as you go. Toward the end of my school year, my art students learn how to make props out of cardboard. All I really have to source for their build is hot glue. Glue small sections at a time and hold it till it cools. This is why I like to use low temp glue guns. Fill in any gaps with hot glue and use the side of your nozzle to smooth out the bumps. I also go over all the edges and clog up the corrugation holes with hot glue. If you are going to paint, this step is crucial to make it look less like cardboard, and it supports all of your edges. I bought this faux leather tape, which is supposed to be for covering holes on furniture. It was on a flash sale on Amazon, and I figured I could use it for a weapon handle, but why not make this cardboard look fancy? I cut it bigger than it needed to be, peeled off the paper backing, and then stuck it down. I had to go back over some of the edges once it was done and glue them down. It didn't get a great adhesion to the cardboard. hide all my sloppy edges, I took some light brown of the same type of tape and cut it into small strips. Then I just laid it over the seam lines. If you don't have this kind of tape, you could do the same thing with duct tape or electrical tape or whatever to do it, or you could even just paint it. For my recesses, I decided to use the cross-stitching plastic canvas mat you see here. I just cut it to size and glued it on the inside. Watch out for your fingers when using hot glue. Even low temp can burn you pretty good. Then to finish it off, similar to my foam mask, I used some 1-inch elastic banding, glue it to some strips of cardboard for support, and then sandwich it onto the mask. I reinforced the connection by piling on hot glue on the sides also. Canned air turned upside down lets out a stream of fluorocarbon liquid that insta-cools your hot glue in case you are impatient like me. After finishing my cardboard mempo, I thought, could I use this same cross-stitching mesh to make an entire mask instead of just a recess panel? So let's give it a go. Same steps as before, using the templates, trace it onto the materials. I tried to line it up so that the edges landed mostly on squares instead of getting cut little lines. I bought this spool of red suede lace for another project a while back and thought it would be a little more interesting to use this than just yarn or some other thread. I tie a knot on one side and then starts the ridiculous task of weaving in and out tiny squares, slowly stitching together these pieces. I do the best to line them up as I go. It took a couple of hours to connect everything together. Pull it tight but not too tight. Both the lace and the mesh can break if you pull it too hard. I can remember my grandmother using this mesh mat stuff to make tissue box cozies. Don't know that I ever saw her make a mask out of one though. For the strapping, I just tied on another strip of the lace to each side so you can tie it behind your head to fit. The suede lace got me thinking about a tote of scrap leather I have in my storage bin. I buy remnant cuts from the craft store and thought, why not stitch together a leather MK mask? I have little to no experience with leather work, just randomly putting on a handle here and there. If you want to see a pro, watch Prince Armory on YouTube. His work is amazing. I traced the template onto the back of my leather and cut it all out. To make it relatively even and easy to pull a needle through, I use a stitching punch along all of my edges. I slightly hit it with a hammer since my table is a glass top. Just to show you the process, I hit the rest of it on a hard surface so I don't smash my glass. Now, very similar to the cross-stitch mat mempo, the painstaking task of sewing up these pieces. I used a single cordovan stitch to join all of my pieces. You go through the piece, then as you come back around over the top, you go through the loop that is closing. It helped me to keep everything tight, and I like the way it looked on the edges. To give this thin leather structure, I sewed some of that cross-stitching mesh on the inside to reinforce it. I've been using a lot of EL wire in projects recently and wanted to try using it as stitching for one of these masks. The material I'm using is a thermoplastic sheet from Polyplastics. A lot of people don't realize I made videos for them before I started my own channel. I traced the template and cut it out with scissors. My thought was this material would allow the glow to diffuse across the surface. I plot out the points on each piece where I need to punch a hole for the wire to lace through. I make sure to give it about 1/4 of an inch from the edge, punch holes at every corner and try to space them out as even as possible, then stagger holes on the corresponding parts so that your stitch goes diagonally across. Time to lace it up. This part was a little difficult because I had to hold tension on the line to keep the pieces together as I worked around the mask. One 9-foot EL wire was enough to string all the way around the mask with extra left over. To tie off the end, I ran it under the stitching along the top and held it all together with a single squirt of hot glue on one side. I used 1-inch wide elastic banding for this one, similar methods as the cardboard and leather mask. I hot glued it into place, then carefully heated up a small piece of thermoplastic to hold it into place, similar to how I do with the cardboard or the foam, just to make sure the strap doesn't pull out. And we are finished. Here is the end result. Overall, I was pretty impressed with how well it did adapt. Now, I will point out a couple of things that you probably want to keep in mind if you're going to modify any of my templates or anybody's templates for that matter in terms of changing the materials. You have to be cautious about what form or shape that particular object is in. With the Mempo, it was relatively angular, so there's not a lot of drastic curves in it, which allows for using a little bit more rigid materials like cardboard or this polyplastic sheets. You could be very inventive with using materials. Like, I never would have thought that this cross-stitching mat would make a cool mask, but I think it kind of works. So I've done the difficult part, which is making the template for you. Be adventurous with the materials. Try something new. Try something different. Try something you've not seen before. I was pretty impressed with how my cardboard one turned out after I wrapped it in the vinyl, because a usual thing that I deal with when I was trying to make stuff out of cardboard early on was no matter how good you paint it or how many coats of sealant you put on it, you can still kind of make out the ridges of the cardboard. So definitely work within the material itself, find its weaknesses, find its strengths, and run with it. Maybe you will try and make an interesting mask yourselves with a different material than normal and impress people with your creativity, ingenuity, finding something cheaper that typically gets thrown away. Yeah. Maybe you'll get some.
Yay!
And inevitably, someone's going to ask you, how'd you make that? You can give them one of these, tell them, much props. I'm going to go with the cardboard. I think it looks kind of classy. Peace out.